Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, the top AIOps predictions for 2025. Very excited to welcome you all here. We have Asaf Resnick and Jason Walker, who will be kind of going through how we're thinking about the industry, how we're thinking AI is going to revolutionize how people work in IT operations and incident management. And it's going to be a really exciting conversation. For those of you that are live, feel free to engage with us. There's a question box that you can use where you can ask questions, or if you want to kind of ask us to go in a little bit deeper, you're welcome to do it. I'll be managing that. But of course, we have some content as well in the BrightTalk application that you can download. And of course, this will be made available on demand, so you can share it with all your colleagues and re-listen to it over and over again based on the insights that you're learning today. Let me go ahead and introduce our speakers. Asaf is, of course, our co-founder and CEO. Prior to BigPanda, he worked at Sequoia Capital, where he was focused on early growth stage investing in software, internet, and mobile sectors. And at that time at Sequoia, that's when he kind of really understood and learned the complexities that IT were having with scale and velocity of data that operations teams were facing. So that's the problem that Asaf looked to solve with BigPanda. And Jason is our Chief Innovation Officer, working with illustrious engineers to kind of think about how can we leverage the latest and greatest technologies to solve customer problems that we haven't always thought about in a conventional way. Jason came from us from Blizzard, where he was working and used BigPanda in running his IT operations team, and really kind of understood the power of AIOps within an organization. So the perspectives you'll be hearing in today's webinar come from a customer, from an innovation team, from a CEO who's seen and breathed all of the evolution of our industry. So I think we will provide a really kind of interesting perspective of where we think the market's going for the next year. And with that, let's kick off the first prediction for 2025. So the first one is ITOps and ITSM are the low-hanging fruits for disruption for CIOs looking to adopt GenAI. Asaf, can I hand it to you in terms of why you think this prediction will hold true?
Absolutely. You know, if you think back to, if you think of innovation in waves, the last 15 years, the big wave that was on CIO's mind was the cloud. And CIOs over the last decade were really making their reputation based on how effective am I at moving my enterprise to the cloud. And people either made their career based on that or didn't based on that, their inability to do that. And if you look forward to the next 10 years, I predict that CIOs are going to be making their career or breaking their career by the ability to bring their enterprise to AI, to leverage the whole platform that GenAI creates to do things better, cheaper, faster. So their CIOs are under intense pressure right now to bring AI use cases to their enterprises, especially in ways that deliver tangible value, tangible ROI. And I think that ITOps and service management are two very low-hanging fruits for that to happen. If you think of ITOps, it's a cost center. It's very manual work. There's a lot of work that's either on your payroll or offshored to service managers or to service providers. But either way, it's human beings doing the work of operations and service management. It's a giant cost center. And I think GenAI has the ability to disrupt a lot of that and bring, order of magnitude improvements in efficiency and capabilities and automation. So I think it's a real low-hanging fruit for CIOs when they're looking at how do I bring, fast and tangible value to my organization.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Jason, would you have anything to add in terms of like the GenAI application for these different teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say as CIOs look across our organization for opportunities to employ GenAI, there's that top-down pressure of, hey, we've heard about the new AI technologies. We're watching OpenAI and Anthropic and all the other major providers kind of roll it out at a consumer level. What can we do in the enterprise? And I think the first target of opportunity is probably CS, actually, before ITOps and ITSM. And we're already seeing that. And we have customers in that business, and the ability to use the existing AI technology as it is today is super powerful in the CS domain. Now, if you take a step up in complexity and a step up in the value chain, ITOps and ITSM, it's been pretty static, or I would say in a period of sustaining innovation for a long time, which led to the feeling by CIOs that, hey, this is a cost center, like Asaf said. Our job is to optimize it, minimize it. There wasn't an opportunity to really get in there and disrupt it, though, and do it differently and make a 10x improvement. And now I think we're right at the cusp on the technology side with GenAI and the surrounding suite of technologies that you can actually go in there, look at your processes that you're using in ITSM and ITOps, and mine them for use cases where AI can come in and make a major difference. And even below the CIO, I'd say the people that are executing today, ITOps and ITSM at large enterprises, are seeing that potential themselves. And they're starting to use off-the-shelf tools from the big OpenAIs and Copilot and some of the other major products out there. And they're starting to get that grassroots kind of willingness to adopt. And so I think you have a little bit of a perfect storm there for the CIO who's looking to make that change, has to manage at a huge organization through this period of disruption we're entering. And this is really going to be an opportunity. And then I'm sure they'll move on to other parts of their organization as the technology matures and is able to do more and more.
Yeah, that's really, really great points. I think it's very exciting to see how we're seeing that kind of adoption now and where it's going to go even in a year from now. We'll see it expand maybe into other areas, as you mentioned, like Jason, like observability or things. So we're definitely excited to see how this kind of takes off within the ITOps and ITSM space. Great. Okay. Next prediction is that the CIOs move beyond the CMDB as the central data repository. Every tool and unstructured data is now a knowledge source to feed AI. Interesting prediction, gentlemen. They're saying we're moving beyond the CMDB. We've tried. How do you think CIOs can now think about it? Jason, do you want to start?
I'll lead off on this one. CMDB, even the mention of it, brings back memories of trying to boil an ocean of different teams and architectures and engineering disciplines to say, hey, make sure you're feeding our CMDB, our configuration management database, with all of your CIs, with all of the information around them. And we integrate across this huge frontage of different systems to try to get that thing up to date and have some sort of representation of your actual topology in a data repository that you can then use for operations. And it's usually a multi-year effort. And I think 9 times out of 10, it's at best partially successful. And so I think we've reached peak frustration if you're on an ITOps team or an ITSM team with getting all the different teams, the fragmented silos of different CIs that are out there into a CMDB. So there's definitely a need there. On the other side of it, GenAI technology and vector DBs and graph DBs in particular, the indexing of data that traditionally has not been considered data, unstructured data from your chat systems, from all of your documents that you keep in your knowledge base, from all of those diagrams, because we're multimodal now with GenAI. It can ingest pictures. It can ingest a back of the napkin drawing by your cloud architect that says, here's how our cloud is constructed. And then it can convert that into data that an AI and LLM can actually leverage via retrieval augmented generation. everything now is part of that, what a CMDB really was sold as, which is kind of, here's your inventory and up-to-date map of the entire universe of your services and all its components. That's what a CMD is sold as. It almost always falls short. Now you can actually take in all the data from all the sources, even transcriptions from meetings that your engineering teams are having where they're discussing an upcoming change. You can convert that into usable data that an LLM can consume and incorporate into its assistance with day-to-day operations tasks. So if I want to know where that particular router or switch is in terms of its current configuration, I can consult a far broader array of data sources now than I ever could before. And that's game changing, I think, in ways that'll become apparent over the next year. But just you're finally able to accurately understand where things are at a large enterprise that has literally millions of moving parts that it has to keep track of.
Interesting.
So I'll add to that, I think that GenAI can really revolutionize what the data stack looks like for a CIO's operations. And for a very long time, to the extent that there was automation, it was very rules-based automation that had to have, very pre-processed, highly structured data. And so your CMDB became this foundational data layer where you had to do a lot of work to make sure all the sources were in there and they were all, curated and made, and kept up to date, so all your CIs were accurate and in a very specific format. Otherwise, the very brittle rules you were using to connect the dots would all break down. And if your CMDB wasn't very good, the value you got from the logic feeding off of that data wasn't very good. And with GenAI, you don't really need one anymore because, as Jason said, GenAI can deal with much more unstructured information. It can deal with much broader set of information that goes beyond just the confines of a CI. And I think that's, blows the lid off of the opportunities enterprises can use all of the information in whatever form you have it across your footprint. However messy it is now usable by GenAI to generate insights and knowledge without you having to spend so much time pre-processing it and manicuring it for you. So that's a really big value unlock. It's suddenly a lot of enterprises are going to realize, as Jason said, like, wow, I have 90% more institutional knowledge than I thought I did because I'm not just looking at it through the keyhole of my CMDB. And that's a real value unlock.
It's really interesting. It's kind of like a great perspective of like the low-hanging fruit and the previous prediction around how GenAI will help with ITOps and ITSM. This is a great example of how companies can start thinking about the value they have all across the enterprise. It comes to different types of data and how they can use that in AI and AI applications.
Yeah, and really re-architecting your entire approach to data fabric. Instead of saying, hey, the sum total of my data fabric is the CMDB, now saying I can really unify that data fabric across all my different silos and all my different data types.
Yeah. Exciting. We know the challenges of the CMDB. Everybody wants a clean, accurate one. Most don't. But this is a new way of thinking about how to organize their IT. So that's really exciting. Okay. Continuing along ITSM, we predict that AI agents power the shift from ITIL-based specialists to full-stack service management generalists. Jason, can I hand it over to you to kind of explain what we're thinking here?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about ITIL and the need for ITIL as a methodology, it basically divided the very complicated world of running large-scale services at large enterprises into tens of different functions. There's change management, there's service management, there's event management, there's incident management, problem management, all these little boxes where you have a specialist, somebody that's trained in that, and works very hard within that box to make as much of a difference as they can at their organization. If you're talking about release management and the processes around updating your your software or your hardware, your data centers, your any component of a large scale service, they're trying to work within that domain to improve things. And that has been the case. I think ITIL was initiated sometime in the 90s. And it has been a steady trend of specialization, like hyper specialization at large enterprises, to the point where some of the knowledge gets siloed and some of it's locked up within these specializations. And there's not a lot of, I'll call it empathy across those functions into other areas. Okay, so we've been in that world and we're all kind of swimming in that. And large enterprises live and breathe it, and their org structures reflect that. But enter generative AI, which has the equivalent of a PhD in every one of those domains and is at your fingertips to answer any question that you might have about it, and can ingest, like we talked about, and index all of your organizational data to see how you specifically do something like change management or incident management or event management. And with that capability, I think we're entering, and this is the prediction, and the stop to the specialization and hyper specialization and the silos and fragmentation that occurs with that, back to an era where generalists can be powerful at an organization, where a full stack service management generalist can actually look across all those domains and say, here is what is most important and going to have the most impact on our overall operations. And that expert at your fingertips idea is really, coming to light, even internally to BigPanda. We run a pretty massive global service, and we're able to do that with very, very few generalist resources, because we now have just a deep understanding of, we have a network engineer, a cloud engineer, a application developer, and a deep understanding of each of our microservices that we're running and all of our security systems and their impacts on each other, where we can do something like a change risk analysis that looks historically at our incidents and our problems, our long-term recurring problems that have caused incidents in the past, and bake the learning from that into the way that we release new updates to our software. And I think we're a fairly small company running a fairly large service, and we're trying to take advantage of this technology, at the bleeding edge. But I think large enterprises have even more of a potential here to confront something that they really have had trouble confronting, and that is the fragmentation of their service management over a period of decades into hundreds of small teams, each of which has very little, like I said, empathy for the other domains in there. And now we can get beyond just an enterprise architect trying to herd the cats in one direction and have everyone kind of aligned to the same overall philosophy of operations and the priority of effort within that.
So yeah, I'll add to that. Where does, in the first prediction, which is, hey, GenAI, ITOps, service management, that's some low-hanging fruit for applying GenAI. This is where the rubber hits the road. Just like, you don't need a data architecture based on a CMDB. You can do something new that's much more appropriate to GenAI. You don't need an organizational architecture that looks like it did 20 years ago, where you have, level 1 operators and then problem managers and level 2 and level 3, because so much of the cognitive load can be done by AI agents, then you can, really go to a much smaller handful of full stack service management generalists. That's how you get 10x efficiency. And that is not just, hey, I need less people. It's I can re-architect my org, and I can re-architect the operations and the service management workflow, that it doesn't have to go from station 1 and then station 2 and station 3. That's why your mean time to resolution is so long, because you have to go through the assembly line, and a lot of batons get dropped as things get handed off. You can rethink that entire assembly line of operations and service management to be much smaller amount of full stack generalists. Mm-hmm. And that's a really powerful application of Gen AI, I think.
Yeah. Jason, we had a question that came in. What do you think the job profile of this new full stack service management looks like? What are the capabilities or characteristics of this person?
So we have the concept of a full stack software engineer, and it's somebody that can deal with kind of all of the, not just the coding, but all of the stack, from the very, very front end of the presentation layer, all of the interactions there, all the way down to, how are we providing this service with resources, the compute, the power, the memory, and they know a little bit about all of those aspects. And I'd say in the operations field, if you just shift the focus and say, what are the disciplines there? Well, it's not the coding, it's not the building of a service, but it is the running of that service. And so if you kind of look from the monitoring and observability around a service to the capacity management of that service, to the incident management for that service, and then the problem management and long-term improvements to the overall system that is running that service, and into the architecture and recommendations around that, your full stack generalist will be good at all of those, and they will be massively empowered by using Gen AI technologies to inform every part of that, so that they can make that job profile really make this service run better and more efficiently, and do it much, have the time from the learning of hey, we need to make this improvement to have us operate better. This alert isn't doing what it needs to. This monitoring check is creating a lot of noise and we need to get rid of it. And this other one is detecting critical failures, but we need a service level indicator around that. It's somebody who can immediately assess that and then put into action the necessary changes and improvements to keep that service running. And I would say, when you think about an SRE, site reliability engineer, or a DevOps engineer, it looks like that, but it's across a broad frontage of services that supports a large enterprise business. So that kind of ability to be both broad and deep, that's the full stack generalist. He can go across disciplines and make really positive impacts very rapidly, for better service availability and also less friction internally. And just as an example, if a team has a problem with their change management process right now, then you have to connect the changes that they make that might be fumbled, that might cause disruptions, to the incidents that they cause. And right there, you have two separate specializations: incident management and change management. And an SRE sits in the seat that, hey, I actually worry about both of those. A full stack generalist he doesn't have to worry about the organizational boundaries between those two teams and the different data that they interact with, one incident data and one change data from an orchestration system. He can have a domain expertise in both of those areas and immediately connect the dots between, we need to change our release management processes in order to prevent incidents. And I don't have to go through any layers of organizational bureaucracy or permissioning to make that happen. And I think that's, a small little window into what we mean with this prediction.
Really exciting opportunity for a lot of our customers. I'm looking forward to rehashing our predictions next year when we do this, and maybe see on LinkedIn if someone has that as part of their title or not. We'll see if we were right or not.
You're going to try to keep us honest, which is always dangerous. Okay.
For sure. All right. I think this is a great leeway into our next prediction. That in 2025, the adoption of AI accelerates the transition of L1 offshoring to L2 onshoring. Asaf, I know you have some thoughts around this. I'll let you take the lead.
Sure. I mean, I think this is the other side of the coin of the previous prediction, which is that AI, moves from kind of ITIL, siloed specialists to full stack generalists. I think this is where the rubber meets the road for that. So if you think of the last 20 years, how would a CIO try to bring efficiencies to ITOps and service management? Well, they would do it by trying to offshore them to low-cost labor environments and manage service providers in Eastern Europe or India or other low-cost locations. And, I think companies have maximized the efficiencies they can get from that strategy. Along comes AIOps, along comes GenAI and said, hey, a lot of that cognitive load can be done of L1s can be done by GenAI, which means you can rely much less on those L1s, and what cannot be done completely by AI can then be escalated to full stack L2 specialists. Probably a lot more of those are folks that have a deeper set of familiarity with your operating environments, people that have been more experienced, have been in your enterprise for longer, know where a lot more of the bodies are buried. Those people are more likely going to be onshored. They're more expensive, but their productivity is much, much higher. And so as folks are looking for those 10x efficiency increases, I think that a lot of the L1 offshoring is going to be automated by GenAI, letting you rely on a much smaller amount of full stack onshored L2s. And I think the result you're going to get there is, faster operations, faster availability, faster break fixes, faster MTTR, and you're going to do it 10x cheaper.
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday, and Jason, you were also talking about the importance of reliability and service availability, and how having L2s closer to these teams geographically also makes a really big difference. Could you kind of share about the importance of why bringing the L2s onshore would be for a CIO?
It's always been amazing to me, with as important as digital services, online services are to modern businesses. We're basically all software companies at this point, whether you're running an airline or a manufacturing company building cars. You are completely dependent on your IT services being up. And yet, people have made the decision to say, well, it's not important enough that those keep running, that I want that to be managed by somebody that reports to me. I'm actually going to have this complex contractual relationship with a third party that I have to establish their targets and their responsibilities very specifically, and they will never operate outside the bounds of that contract to do right by my services. It's always amazed me that people want to offshore that, because I really, maybe it's because of my background, but operations seem like the lifeblood of a modern company. Keep your services up or your customers will hate you. And maybe that's because I come from the gaming industry and they were fairly vocal whenever we went down. But I think now, what does a productivity increase with the use of AI technologies look like? It's the reduction in the footprint of cost-cutting measures that were maybe necessary at some point, because individual resources that are managed by your company, within your company, they're organic to your business, they can cover all of that. And I actually have experience with this. Blizzard's sister company, Activision, was offshoring network operations responsibilities. So connecting all of their corporate offices and all those game studios that are doing all that development, any network failure of all those was sent overseas to a team that ran 24/7. And that team's primary response was to pick up the phone and call somebody at Activision to ask them what an alert meant and what they should do about it. So they were basically just watching a screen. And then from there, it was an incredibly slow process to get things resolved. And when we brought BigPanda into Blizzard, Activision was looking to onshore that because the development teams that depended on those network services were so frustrated by the level of service there. And so very quickly, we realized, yeah, we can ingest all of those network events and provide you perfectly good service, shift over to secondary circuits and keep your offices online and reduce your overall costs without increasing my team size at the time at all. I could do it with existing resources because we had increased the productivity of every individual in our operations center. And I think that just drove home to me, and I've kind of brought it to every one of BigPanda's customers that I've worked with, that you really don't want to outsource this critical of a function, and you can do it efficiently, cost effectively, just by changing the processes and really connecting the right real-time data to the right resources and the right processes very, very quickly. And now with AI, you can do that 10 times better. So I see this happening more and more over the next year. This is going to be a tidal wave. And I think this is the type of disruptive decision at a CIO level that really can change how the CFO looks at you and what you're doing. Because offshoring, my particular experience with it, it was incredibly expensive. I was blown away by how much we were spending on a very low quality offshore experience.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Next one. This is a goodie. CIOs start to think internally about internally grown ITSM solutions. This tempers the dominance of large ITSM players. Jason, I know you were just speaking, but I want to kind of ask you to start, because I know we've had a few conversations around this and you have a really interesting perspective here.
I should have brought a glass of water. I think, how do I put it? So we have some really dominant players in the SaaS business, and names like Salesforce come to mind, where they provide a really robust, large-scale service that is generic. It is for the entire world to use Salesforce. Anybody who has a Salesforce is almost obligated at this point to use their software. And that's coming at an increasing price. And of course, they're releasing new features and doing a good job as a company to keep their customers happy. But AI and the introduction of fairly good software engineering and ability to build via prompt, where natural language prompting can actually result in code and take care of maybe the bottom 25% or 50% of development workload. That is opening up for CIOs the potential that has it went away in the age of SaaS, that, hey, maybe I should build something native to my organization that is perfectly suited to my organization. And a company called Klarna recently did this. They canceled their contracts with Salesforce and ServiceNow and built their own homegrown ITSM solution and their own homegrown, what would you call Salesforce solution. And they made that decision very vocally because they did the math and said, I can employ a small number of engineers to build and maintain this tool that I will have complete control over. And that is less costly to me than the costs of purchasing SaaS and the complexity around purchasing SaaS, because you have a long sales cycle. They're always, I won't speak for BigPanda. We try to do a good job with our customers here, but they're trying to upsell you, and they do squeeze. Like, there is a negotiation there, and you can end up on the wrong side of it if you're a CIO. And all of a sudden, we have an alternative. You don't have to go buy one of these massive SaaS solutions that might not be well suited to your business. And if you look at large, like some of the mega corporations like Apple, they don't use anybody's project management software. They built their own internal solution because they said our processes are unique, our development methodologies are unique, and we're going to build something because we have great engineers who can do that. And that's more cost effective than using somebody else's solution. And I think that last bullet in blue, or it's not a bullet, that last sentence, this tempers the dominance of large ITSM players. I would put it a little bit more gently. It puts a top end on how much they can charge, because at a certain point, a CIO will say, you know what? It's now worth it to me to invest in a development team to build our own solution and take this part of the business completely internal. That is preferable to paying this much OpEx, which, I would say this one is fairly controversial, but at least one company has already made this decision.
Saf, anything to add from the CEO perspective?
No, well said.
Well said, or I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Well, look, I mean, executives are always thinking through build versus buy decisions. And, the traditional rule of thumb is you should focus on your core competence as a business and buy everything else, but don't build what's not inside of your core competence. It's too expensive. It's too difficult. The upkeep. GenAI has broken down a lot of that math, which says at a certain point, if I'm paying $20 million for this piece of SaaS, and I'm really only using 20% of the capabilities that it gives me, hey, can I roll my own with GenAI, given the developer productivities that it enables, given the ability for AI to do a lot of the pre-processing and not have to create this highly structured architecture? Suddenly, the math of build versus buy changes. And so, like, Jason was saying, that does temper that does put a ceiling on how much the large SaaS providers can charge, because at a certain point it's saying, hey, the build versus buy ROI, well, the price just went down on when it's worth it for me to build.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it kind of reinforces, I think, also the kind of point that we're seeing with the disruption in ITSM and ITOps, where there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that GenAI can provide. Companies are moving beyond the CMDB. They're onshoring new L2 resources. They're getting a lot of capabilities and value. But now they're also thinking about, well, do I need this infrastructure that I had built to support the function previously? I have a new way of supporting my business. Maybe I need to rethink the software that I use that.
Yeah, and look, I mean, think about it. If you think of, at least on the ITOps side, so much of the information that your humans are managing is machine data. And over the last 10 years, as enterprises have moved to multi-cloud, microservices, containers, CI/CD, the amount of machine data has exploded. The velocity at which that machine data is moving has exploded. And for the longest time, the only way you could keep up with that is software provided by someone else that said, hey, I have a fairly rigid process to help you consume all of that machine data, otherwise you'll drown. Along comes GenAI and says, well, look, I'm pretty good at taking all that fuzzy, fast-moving data and letting you customize how you process that. That's fundamentally re-architecting how people are thinking about ITOps. Re-architecting how I think about CMDB as a data structure, re-architecting how I think of my organizational strategy. Do I need so many L1s? why can't I just do a lot of the cognitive load pre-processing and have a small handful of L2s, and re-architecting dependency on my traditional SaaS vendors, really re-architecting the entire ecosystem of operations.
Yeah. Amazing. Great. All right. We have one last one, and I think it's a goodie. This is OpenTelemetry and AI delivers health visibility for apps and services without the need for costly observability platforms. Okay, Jason. Sorry, I can't hear you anymore.
Jason, we can't hear you.
Jason, I can't hear you. 1 second.
Okay, we'll wait for 1 sec.
Okay.
Let's try that. Is that any better?
Oh, better. Yes.
Yes, technology. All right. OpenTelemetry and AI delivers health visibility for apps and services without the need for costly observability platforms. I think this is just starting to be realized, that the entire pipeline of observability to metrics, events, logs, and traces to an event management platform, and then into an incident management cycle with AI agents specifically. If you have instrumented your code and you are collecting those metrics, those logs, and those traces, it is becoming possible, and we're actually prototyping this with some of our customers, to go out to that service and ask an AI agent to go out to that service and assess its health and say, is this still healthy? And that AI agent is powered by the knowledge of, here's how this service typically operates. Here's where most of your performance metrics are. Here's what those traces, that stack trace, here's what it looks like, node by node and span by span. And all of that data, all those metrics, those logs, those traces are all standardized now by OpenTelemetry. So do you need something to look inside your services outside of the development lifecycle, where you're still building the software and trying to determine how it performs? Once it's launched and out there in some sort of steady state of operations, can an AI agent go out there, assess its health, and just tell you if it's having any problems, rather than a human resource going out and diving into an observability platform, looking at everything, trying to assess the many, many dimensions of performance that you can see in most observability platforms, and then decide what to act on. An AI agent can look at all those dimensions simultaneously. It can assess it versus the history of performance on that service and all its components over a long period of time. And it can tell you really clearly, you've got some anomalies here, here, and here. So it's becoming possible now that through a combination of standardization, which OpenTelemetry, thank God that came along, because we had 50 different standards, one for every observability vendor, and AI, which agentic AI has the capability to operate independently, and periodically it can go out and check all of your services, or each of your services that you've configured it to go check, and report back to you. That's a totally different operating model, and one that is very approachable. If I'm a small company, if I was starting a business right now, would I want to go spend a mint on observability platforms? No, I'd probably instrument it myself, and I'd feed it into an AI agent to keep tabs on that service and tell me when anything was going sideways.
Interesting.
Yeah, and look, and I think what adds fuel to this is that the cost of observability is skyrocketing. The whole concept of observability is you want to be able to observe all of the things that may be important within your operating footprint, but you're paying for that observability typically on a volume basis, and so before you know it, you're paying millions or tens of millions of dollars to these observability platforms, and they've got you where they want you. And so the advent of OpenTelemetry says, hey, kind of disaggregated the observability vendors as not the agents of instrumentation, but how do I take standard instrumentation and add analytics and a UI on top of that that a human can interface with? Well, if I've got the signal, now I can use AI in way more versatile ways and significantly cheaper ways and bring back, get better visibility without having to pay $1 million, $10 million for that service. So I think this is very in the early days, but I think OpenTelemetry plus AI is really going to be an earthquake for the observability market.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. This was the last of the predictions. Thank you both. I wanted to kind of end it on a question for you both. AIOps, the term, there's been a lot of hope that the industry has had around what AI could do for IT operations and ITSM. Do you think these are pretty bold predictions we're making with AI? I don't think we would have done this 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Do you think now the premise and the hopes of AIOps is now going to be realized?
Yeah, I do. I think AIOps, it's a term that's been around for at least 5 years, and the concept of how do you use AI to take IT operations and service management and make it better, cheaper, faster, that's been around. But it's been in the realm of early adopters. And now I think a few things have happened. One is GenAI has really ignited the popular imagination of what AI can do. It's a truism that AI will disrupt, every vertical, whether it's marketing or finance or HR, and absolutely the very manual and very resource-intensive vertical of ITOps. And so I think the market has become, AI curious vis-a-vis ITOps. The other thing I think is the trust barrier has been breached or has been crossed where, for a long time, IT leadership said, wait, you want this black box AI to not only generate insight, but to make decisions based on that affect my mission critical operations. That's really scary. I don't trust it. You're now at a point where AI is driving your car, and you've got I was in San Francisco the other day, and you've got driverless taxis by Waymo. And people are understanding, look, if AI can drive my car, I can probably trust it to automate a whole other set of workflows. And so what was, I think, a very evangelical sale for AIOps is now, as I said, CIOs feeling a ton of pressure to bring AI to the organization, in multiple areas under the purview of the CIO. In operations is a very low-hanging fruit.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both very much for today's webinar. If those in attendance, if you want more predictions, go to our website on the Content Hub, where we have the Gartner Top Strategic Predictions for 2025 and beyond. We're going to be at the Gartner IOCS event in Las Vegas next week. So if any of you are listening live or in the recording want to meet with us, please come to our booth or reach out and we'll be happy to meet with you. But otherwise, really great conversation. Thank you. Really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how these progress through the year. And we're definitely going to revisit them next year when we do this and see how we did. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well,